Hello, this is Gradye Parsons, and this is our continuing series on the Book of Order, looking at the foundations of polity. We're looking at them one by one, piece by piece, and also talking about them in terms of how they relate to the Book of Confessions. Today, we're looking at F10301, as we were last time. This time we're looking at specifically the very next section, which says, the church is to be a community of faith, entrusting itself to God alone, even at the risk of losing its life. Now, where I want to relate this to the Book of Confessions is in the brief statement of faith, in the section where it starts talking about Jesus around line 20, and it says, Jesus was crucified, suffering the depths of human pain, giving his life for the sins of the world. God raised his Jesus from the dead, vindicating his sinless life, breaking the power of sin and evil, delivering us from death to life eternal. Now, the phrase from the foundation of polity, the church has to risk its life even to death, is something that was in the former Book of Order. It's not a new phrase for us, but it's an affirmation of something that we say pretty lightly sometimes and don't take very seriously, perhaps. It's this whole sense of the church being at risk in the world. In our American culture, in our context, for the most part of especially our lives, and certainly for the life of the church since the Revolution, the church, at least the Protestant church, has been a fixture in the establishment. We've been pretty well protected. There were times when we had to fight for different kinds of rights in our society, but pretty much we've been a protected venture. We've been part of what society understands it means to be an American, what it means to be part of your community or my community. It means to be part of the church life. But that's beginning to change. And part of something we can learn from our brothers and sisters in the global South is where most of them have lived in places where the church was not a protected entity, is how to be the church when we're not the church of the government, when we're not the church of the structure, that we really are a counterweight to what else is going on in the society. And that's part of what this text is about. Other part of what this text is about is that sometimes when we talk about we can't do such and such a thing because it might risk the life of the church, we have to realize that we say in our Constitution that we are actually willing to do that. If you look at the whole life of the church, and I like to read histories, and I'm right now working my way through this mammoth history of Christianity. If you look at the whole history of the church, take the big picture, the church has always been a church at struggle. At various times, we've had various emperors and kings and queens who have wrapped their arms around us, but by and large, the church has been a church at struggle. We've been struggling with society. We've been struggling trying to find our place. We've been struggling against the values of the people around us. We've always been at risk at who we are. And there today are Christians who are dying for their faith, Christians who are being imprisoned for their faith, Christians who are standing up to powers of empire that are evil and are harmful where they are and all over the place, and are being imprisoned. That's part of our heritage as a church. So your particular congregation, your particular body of witnesses, you are the people who also have inherited that incredible courage, that incredible willing to sacrifice that is the church. You've inherited, along with me, this great cloud of witnesses who have gone before us, who are willing to lay down their lives so that we can be the church. So we have to realize that this phrase that's just printed on words right now, the church may be at risk of its own life, is not a phrase that doesn't have meaning or hasn't really meant literally that in the life of the church. People who have died for the churches that have died for themselves, for their society, that we're willing to risk that the purpose of the church is not just to live, but to be a faithful witness to Jesus Christ. And if we're going to be a witness to Jesus Christ, we have to realize that our life may be patterned like Jesus Christ, which may be a life of ultimate sacrifice, believing and holding on to the resurrection ultimately. So look at your church. Our church job is not just to keep ourselves going forever and ever, but to really be faithful witnesses, even at the point of risking our life. So ask yourself that question as you think about this particular part. What would your church be willing to risk? Would it be willing to risk its life for what it stands for, and would be willing to risk its life for what it thinks is wrong in its society around it, and willing to stand up to that? That is the question God is asking us every day, and the question we're being called to respond to is we be faithful Christians. Thanks, and we'll see you again.